Are you looking to advance your technology, develop your skills, work with our network of experts, and get top-notch mentorship? Applications are open for the UCSF Rosenman RISE. Through RISE, we identify promising entrepreneurs from groups that are underrepresented in health tech, such as women, people of color, and LGBTQ+ individuals, and we connect them with any number of leaders from our UCSF network and beyond. To apply, please visit rosenmaninstitute.org/programs/RISE. Applications close on February 9th.
If you are an early stage company, what we look at is there a clear unmet need that they are addressing, right? Which is just similar to what VCs do. Is the size of the opportunity meaningful? And do you have a technology or an IP? You might not have a full product, but do you have technology that is differentiated? And if those three things are right, and then number 4 we look at is, do we see this technology in our portfolio? And what can it do for us?
And now, from San Francisco and the UCSF Rosenman Institute, the Health Technology Podcast with your host, Christine Winoto.
If you're not a leader, you can learn. At least you can if you listen to a couple of key lessons from our podcast guest today, Rajit Kamal. Rajit is the worldwide president for sports medicine and shoulder reconstruction at Johnson & Johnson. In his career with Johnson & Johnson since 2008, he has held a number of prestigious leadership roles. Some of those include Vice President of Asia Pacific, Vice President and Global Franchise Leader of Knee Replacement, and Senior Director for Strategy and Commercial Initiatives. Today, we go through Rajit's long and fascinating leadership journey. It's taken him through many companies and roles and has a lot of lessons for entrepreneurs at every stage. Here's our conversation. Welcome, Rajit. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you, Christine. Thank you for having me.
And I think you have quite a journey within J&J, but walk us back through your journey from the very beginning and how you decide to come to the U.S. and then path your way to find the place where you are today. I think that would be interesting for our listeners to hear.
Absolutely. So, I grew up in India, Christine. Grew up in a small town in India. And when I was 8 years old, in grade 3, I moved to a boarding school because the place where I grew up, the schooling systems were not that good. So my parents sent me to a boarding school, which I'm very grateful for. So I finished my high school and then I went to engineering school in India. So I'm a chemical engineer. And when I was finishing my undergrad studies, I was always fascinated by the research work that happens in the US. I had heard about the research institutions, the innovation, the ecosystem that the US has. So I always aspired to go to graduate school and be part of that research work. So as I was finishing my undergrad, I applied to multiple schools in the US and came to Georgia Tech in Atlanta in a PhD program in chemical engineering. And at that time, I wanted to be a faculty. I wanted to do research and be a professor. And I had a very good time at Georgia Tech while I was doing my master's. So my professor said, you do your master's and then that will roll into a PhD thesis. While I was doing my master's, I worked with a company in the Atlanta area. And that was my first exposure to working in a corporate environment. And I got fascinated by that. I got fascinated by marketing and R&D and quality and how they all work together. How they look at unmet customer needs and they come together to solve those, bring those products to market. So what I told my advisor at that time was, why don't I finish my PhD, go back and work for a few years, and then make a decision whether I want to come back to academia or continue in industry. And he was very open. He said, sure, finish your master's, go and work in the industry. So I finished my master's and I joined Procter and Gamble in the Atlanta area. They have a manufacturing facility. So my first job was in manufacturing. We used to make Charmin and Bounty, the paper towels that P&G sells. And I had a phenomenal experience at P&G. It's a very good organization. In my very first job, I got to manage people, and I thought that was a great experience. And I learned some very important lessons in terms of leadership, in terms of collaboration, and very grateful for that first job. But being at Procter and Gamble, you get to see the power of marketing. You get to see the power of, how do you take a unmet customer need and really delight the customer. So I got very interested in business, and I thought, why don't I go back to school full time and get an MBA? So I applied to Harvard Business School and I was delighted when I got accepted. So I left P&G, came to HBS, and both my parents were physicians. So I have always had the healthcare bent. For whatever reason, never wanted to be a doctor myself, but healthcare was always an area that I was very interested in. So in HBS, I focused a lot on healthcare. So I took a lot of healthcare courses. And after HBS, I joined Boston Consulting Group in the Boston area. But I did a lot of healthcare work. So we did healthcare works with payers, providers, pharmaceutical companies. And through that work, what I realized was consulting was a great learning experience, but I really wanted to be in an industry. And an opportunity came up at J&J. This is almost 14 years back, in the Boston area, in their medical devices division. Yeah, and that's when I joined J&J in 2008. It's been 14 years now, and it's been a fascinating journey, Christine. I have worked across different businesses within orthopedics. I have worked across different functions. I have done marketing, strategy, pricing, business insights. I've worked across regions. So I've had a stint in Asia. I've done global roles. I've done roles in the US. Since October of last year, I have been the worldwide president of our sports medicine and shoulder reconstruction business, which is about a global $1 billion business for us. So it's just been a fascinating journey for me so far.
Yeah, it's really some things that I don't know. And sometimes you look back like, wow, how far you've come along from all the work that you've done. You mentioned about being at P&G that you learned a lot about leadership. I remember when I was at Kraft Foods many years ago, they recruit a lot of people from P&G, and many of them say how much they learned a lot from the P&G training. And can you share with us a little bit what you said? You learned a lot about leadership. Why you specifically identify P&G with learning about leadership?
Yeah, and I think it's the experiences that teach you, right? Right, Christine. So I'll give you a very specific example. So when I was at P&G, as I said, I used to manage people. So I used to manage operators on the factory floor. And I just want you to contrast this, right? So I was an immigrant from India, and this is a place in South Georgia. So this is south of Atlanta. And most of the people that I was managing were hourly employees. They worked on the factory floor. Most of them, highest education they had was high school. And they had grown up in South Georgia, so they're culturally very different, right? So it was very difficult for me when I came in just to connect with them, and it's very hard to be a leader if you're not really connecting with people. And I remember one instance very clearly where I used to come every morning, and we used to have shift changes. We used to have a 24/7 operation, and I remember we had a quality issue, and I was asking the operator that what's going on, and we had this issue last week, and all of a sudden she said, "I can't believe they hire people like you. You're one of the worst managers I've ever worked with." And I was like, why did she say that? And I went back to my manager, and he said, have you made an effort to really get to know them, right? You show up as a manager, you ask questions, but have you really built that relationship? He said, have you really worked night shift? You don't have to, you are a manager, but have you taken that, effort to work night shifts, so to show them that, you are willing to do what you expect your team to do, right? And he said, look, you are a smart guy, maybe management is not for you. But this is all on you, right? I don't think you have really built the respect, built the credibility, built the trust, built the connection to earn your place as a leader. Just because you have that title, that does not make you a leader. You got to earn it. And he said, I'm going to give you 6 months. And if you turn this around, great. If not, I'll move you to an engineering role where you can be an individual contributor. And that was an eye opening for me. And I worked night shifts. I spent time getting to know them, being vulnerable for them to get to know me. And even though we have different cultures, different people, there are a lot of similarities. End of the day, we all care about family, our health. We have similar worries, right? We have similar concerns and similar interests, right? Um, and what it taught me was that what is important is to make an effort to get to know whom you work with, and for them to get to know you. Be vulnerable. um, and unless you build a connection, you cannot be a leader just because you have a title. You have to earn that. You have to earn to be a leader. You have to earn the respect of the people that you work with. And I think that was a very valuable lesson in leadership. And wherever I have gone since then, I've always invested time up front to spend time with the team, and everybody is different, getting to understand who they are, what their aspirations are, what is the best way to connect with them, finding common grounds, but also being very open and vulnerable as well. So, when I say that experience was helpful for me, I think it was, the learnings that I had in terms of being a people leader has really helped me in my 20 plus year career now.
I think also the fact that you get that feedback, it gives you the opportunity to change course with the right time, and then knowing that I need to figure this out if I want to make it work. I think I always think that it's good to have as a leader, to give your supervisor did a nice job in giving you the
100%.
opportunity.
And I am so grateful. At that moment, maybe I was not happy, right? But when I look back, I'm so grateful that, and to be very honest, that's a courageous decision. The easiest thing could have been that, ignore it, that's fine, move on, right? But the fact that he took the time to tell me what I needed to hear, and give me an opportunity to change, I owe a lot to him. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I think so. You mentioned about get to know people, and I think I came from different culture, and like you were saying, getting to know people can be different for different people, and for you to get to know, but also for them to respond to your interest to get to know them. Because I feel like sometimes when I came to this country, people are just like, it's none of your business. Like, what do you need to know? It's nothing. It's not. It's personal. How do you navigate through that when you have so many people from, even though they are all from the South, Georgia, but everybody's slightly different too, right?
It is, and I think it's by trying to find common grounds, right? And you talk to people, and you always find something. Whether it's a common interest in sports, or some movie that they like, or they are thinking about their kid going to college, and you can share that experience. I think always trying to find something that is in common that becomes the hook to build that relationship, right? And remembering that, right? So next time you meet, hey, how is your daughter's college application coming? And people appreciate that, right? Or if somebody follows baseball, hey, I saw your team and they did this. I think you have to make an effort, and you have to be genuine about it. So I think that's another thing. If you're faking it, people will figure it out, right?
Right.
So you have to take a genuine interest in who they are, learn about them, but also share about who you are. And I would say 90% of the time, it works if you find the common ground. There are instances where the other person might not even be interested, right? And that happens. Right? But more than likely, you will find people who would be willing to form that relationship. But I think it's making an effort to being genuine, but genuinely taking an interest in understanding who they are, being curious about them, right? Tell me about your journey, tell me about your experience. And everybody likes talking about themselves, right? Especially if you have somebody who is genuinely willing to listen, and finding things in common. People have different cultures, but you will always find things that are common, always.
Yeah, I think it's also the fact that when you show interest to other people, you become less self-centered. And I think sometimes you see in the in a big podium, it feels like the leader, you get all the limelight, and then sometimes you think being a leader you need to be self-centered, but that's not true.
Not true at all. Not true at all.
This podcast is sponsored by Brown Rudnick's Global Life Sciences Group, a team of legal professionals that help life science companies, lenders, and investors around the world turn good science into good business. Learn more at brownrudnick.com. This podcast is also sponsored by Canon Quality Group. Canon Quality Group has been helping medtech startups set up quality management systems for over 10 years. If you're unsure when to get started with quality management in your startup, turn to the experts at canonqualitygroup.com.
And so after that comment from your boss, 6 months later, I was like, okay, what happened then?
Those 6 months was a lot of effort, right? I worked night shifts. I spent time with them. I made sure that they got to know me. I got to know them. Work became more enjoyable. I looked forward to getting to work, right? People had a smile when they saw me instead of, figuring out, thinking, I don't know what question is he going to ask me, right? I felt uh, people do things because now they want to do things for you, not because, they are going to get questioned or they're going to get penalized, right? It's just a different level of motivation. You get a lot more out of the team. You get better team engagement. So I really enjoyed that. And I think my job became easier. My job became easier. Um, but then, as I said, look, I felt like I wanted to go back and get a formal education in business. I was still very much an engineer, and I decided that maybe this is the right time. I was still young at that time. We didn't have kids. I was married, but we didn't have kids, and I was like, maybe this is the time for me to go back to school full time, get an MBA, and which is what I ended up doing.
Mhm.
And HBS was a phenomenal experience for me as well. When I went to Harvard Business School, so Harvard Business School, as you know, all the classes are case studies. We don't have lectures, right? And the beauty about that is you get to learn from your classmates. So before that, all the schools I had been to, we were all very homogeneous population, which means everybody was science and math. We were interested in science and math, right? In a business school class, it was very diverse. We had people from 75 countries. I had never met a class or been in an environment where that was so diverse, right? We had people from humanities background, military background, entertainment background, banking, consulting. I mean, all sorts of backgrounds, right? And what you realize is that when you're discussing and a question is posed, people approach based on their experience. And it taught me humility because sometimes you think, oh, I know all the answers. But that is not true. When you hear different people's perspective, it changes your mind. So what it teaches you is, you know, be a good listener. Learn to listen from other people who have different experience. That's the beauty of having a diverse team as well. It always leads to a better output. Um, Ask the right questions. As a leader, what is the most important skill is asking the right questions. So I think HBS was a great learning environment for me. I got to learn from my classmates. I learned some of these skills, right? And it also exposed me to, I mean, I was, as I said, very much an engineer, right? And exposed me to so many opportunities. I didn't know much about entrepreneurship or venture capital and the innovation network and all that. Um, but the biggest lesson for me was the value of having diverse perspective. It taught me humility. I thought I was a very bright student, but what you realize is you have to listen to other people, and that's again a very important trait of a good leader as well. But more importantly, ask the question.
Hmm. And so you're saying so important to ask the right question. And how do you develop that?
Yeah. So
Is there like a framework or a tool set that you can, or is it something that you have to go through life in order to get there?
yeah, some of that. So there are two things I would say. Some of that is experience, Christine, right? You do learn over the years, right? But the first thing about being able to ask the right question is to be a very good listener, right? It is to go in without preconceived notions. Like I go into meetings these days and, It's important to go and listen to what the other person is saying and be genuinely curious. Help me understand why, right? Did you look at the other perspective, right? If you're saying we should do X, what if we do Y? What are the risks are we taking, right? And I think it asking the right questions also fosters good conversation, right? Like if you're trying to address an issue, and if I go in and I say, I think we should do X or we should do Y, it shuts down the conversation. Instead of saying X or Y, I think I should ask, hey, team, what are the pros and cons? Tell me more about what would it take. Tell me more about, what would be the consequences of this. So I think some of that you learn through experience, Christine, but I think genuinely listening, being a good listener is step number one. Having genuine curiosity, right? Not jumping to conclusions, having an open mind. I think all these are important foundations to be able to ask the right questions. Um, but I do agree that experience teaches you a lot as well.
And the feedback from others, I think that's also helpful. Um, I know I do also want to ask you a little bit about the business world that you are in the orthopedic space. And maybe you can share with us, I don't know if you're allowed to share with us, like what is J&J Vision? And for entrepreneurs out there who are in the orthopedic space, what are the things that is of interest to J&J? And if you can help them understand, that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, as so the way we are structured, right? So Johnson and Johnson has three different segments. So we have a consumer segment that J&J has announced they plan to divest. And we have a pharmaceutical division, which developed the COVID vaccine and has a lot of pharmaceutical drugs. And then we have a medical tech. We call it MedTech now, where we have three different divisions. We have a cardiovascular division, we have a general surgery, and then we have orthopedics. So orthopedics is about a $9 billion global business for us, and we make products from trauma or spine or joint reconstruction, for sports medicine, the business that I lead, shoulder reconstruction, the business that I lead. And look, our goal is to make sure that we bring the innovative products to market. We say we want to keep people moving. Orthopedics is about activity. I'm in sports business. We people who play sports tear their ACL, right? We make products to fix that so they can go back to doing what they like doing. We make products which can help people get back to activity if you have a shoulder recon. My mother, she passed away last year, but she had both her knees replaced with our products, and uh, it had a huge impact on her life. So we are driven by bringing innovation that can make a difference in lives of patients around the world, to keep them moving, to enable them to do the activities that they want to do. So overall, that is the vision. Uh, but that is driven through innovation. It is driven through education that we provide to our surgeon customers, through service that we provide to our surgeon customers. And more, I think we need to make sure that we are being I would say, a good ecosystem player. So not all innovation has to come from inside. I think we need to partner, and that's where the startup companies come. J&J has J&J, we call it JJDC, Johnson Johnson Development Corporation, which is our VC arm, where we through that we make investments in promising technologies, where we potentially see them being part of our portfolio eventually. So I think all these things. Uh, so that's how we want to make sure that we are being a responsible player in the ecosystem to drive innovation as well.
And so, one of the, I'm sure being where you are, you're constantly looking at the landscape. What are the new technology, the trends? And then there's also technology that's available out there. For example, 3D printed that was created for something else that's now applied to. What are the other technology out there that you think will change how we do orthopedic?
Yeah. So if you think about orthopedic, I think there are a few things that comes to my mind, right? So one is when I say digital, I'm talking about. I think artificial intelligence will have applications in every aspects of our life, and orthopedics is no different, right? So I do see application of AI, whether it is in terms of surgical planning, being able to develop a personalized surgical plan, whether it is in terms of identifying a personalized care pathway, optimizing patients before surgery, ensuring they have a very personalized rehab plan. So I think AI will have a key role to be able to provide insights along the care continuum. So that's one. I do think technologies like robotics, augmented reality will have a role to play when it comes to intraoperative execution. We already have a robot on our knee for our knee replacement business, but I think intraoperatively we will see augmented reality or other technologies seeing more and more adoption. Um, the other technology I think that has applications is biologics. Biologics has been around for a while, but I feel the momentum is building where we will see more and more applications in terms of healing augmentation, pain relief, and I think that will be one area where we will see a lot of progress. The third area I would say is 3D printing. I think whether it is developing personalized models to plan surgery, whether it is eventually for complex surgeries where you are developing a personalized 3D printed implants. But I think those are the three areas where I think we will see a lot of potential technological innovation.
Do you see that is happening now? Do you see there's a lot of innovation and is everybody approach is very similar, or is there a few that is stood out that you're paying attention to?
Well, look, there's a lot of activity in the digital space, a lot of activity, especially in AI and AR. I run into companies all the time. So lot of activity is good. That means people see opportunity, people see potential. Some are good than the others, but again, technology is something where you are constantly iterating, right? So something that not might be good today might be excellent tomorrow, right? So what is important for us is to make sure that we are aware of the activities that are happening and figuring out, companies we want to partner with or potentially, want to bring them to be part of J&J, right? So I think a lot of activity I see on the AI and the AR. I see a lot of activity in the biologic space as well. So as I said, when we think about our innovation, obviously we need to make sure we have a robust internal capability, but we also have to be very actively looking at what is happening on the outside. Because especially in these spaces, there's a lot more happening outside and happening at a much faster rate than we are able to do internally.
Mm-hmm. And so, can you share with us in terms of when you review technology that you think that J&J is interested in, and what stage? I mean, people are saying now, like with medtech now, like, oh, you need to have a commercial track in order to get traction from strategic. And is it really always the case, or there's also some exception? If it is, like, what make it an exception?
Yeah, so look, if you have commercial sales, obviously that is ideal, right? Because you have commercial sales, that means you have de-risked the product. Uh, in a way, you have de-risked some of the commercial, especially on the digital, which is a new thing for us. Commercialization is a question always, right? Can you monetize it? How much can you monetize? Who will adopt? And all that stuff you have to go. So if you think about commercializing a digital product, very different than what we have done before, right? Where do you store the data? Who owns the data? All the things. So if you have a commercial product where you're generating revenue, obviously that's ideal, right? Because then you can just bring them in and you scale it up, right? Which is something for us because of the scale that we have. That is easier for us to do. But that is not always what we do. Sometimes you have a promising technology where we can go through our sister JJDC, the venture arm that J&J has, where we go after promising technology that is going after an unmet need that has a big opportunity. So if you are an early stage company, what we look at is there a clear unmet need that they are addressing, right? Which is just similar to what VCs do. Is the size of the opportunity meaningful? And do you have a technology or an IP? You might not have a full product, but do you have technology that is differentiated? And if those three things are right, and then number four we look at is, do we see this technology in our portfolio? And what can it do for us, right? And if the answers to all those four are on the positive, then I think, there are other ways for us to be able to either partner. Sometimes we could distribute without doing anything. We'll just distribute, right? Or we could make some equity investment as well. So I think depending upon where the company is and what our development, there are different vehicles we have. But obviously, if you have a product that is commercialized, you have commercial sales. That is the easiest pathway. You distribute, you acquire, you scale them up. You have retired some of the typical risks you have, right? Development, regulatory, commercialization. But we are also interested in promising differentiated technologies that we eventually think could be part of our portfolio. But we invest through a different vehicle.
For some reason, I thought my understanding the JJDC is that they invest more like an adventure rather than always think about J&J strategic interests. Is that wrong?
No. Yeah, I think JJDC, most of the investment is in companies that are of strategic interest to the J&J operating companies.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I wish we have a case study that we can discuss specifically why this approach that why it was acquired or by J&J during certain stage. I think that would be quite an interesting topic to talk about. Is there any case study that we can talk about?
Of companies that I'm just trying to think through. Look, nothing specific comes to mind, but there are companies where we have made an equity investment and eventually we have acquired. There are companies where we have done. I'll just give you an example on our spine side. We just acquired a company called Procedian, and it started with a distribution agreement, and then DePuy eventually went and acquired that company. So I think we have, as I said, there is no typical. It depends upon the stage of the technology, the space, what the company is looking for, what our strategic interests are. There are multiple ways to be able to partner. It could start as just an equity investment and leave it there. It could be distribution. It could be upfront acquisition. It could be a distribution that can lead to an acquisition. There are multiple ways. Sometimes smaller companies come to us and they have an FDA approved product, but what they're saying is, can we distribute with you because you have a commercialization arm, right? And sometimes we are interested in that because we can scale it up, and then eventually that might lead to an acquisition. Sometimes companies come very early. They are still developing, but they need a strategic partner as a part of development. And if they have something that is unique and differentiated, maybe we make an equity investment and we partner with them. So again, there is no one size fits all, Christine. It depends. But one thing I would encourage to listeners, if you have a promising technology that you think could be a strategic fit for J&J, reach out to us. If it's in the orthopedic space, definitely reach out to us, or even in general for J&J. We are always looking for promising technology that could be part of our portfolio.
Yeah, that's great. My last question before I let you go, I think it's in a lot of the startups' mind right now with the current financial situation. Everybody's saying it's a bloodbath. It's going to get worse. And I remember when things were bad in the financial market in the old days, a long time ago, startup don't take investment from strategic. And then obviously maybe when there's not many investors and startups there's another way to get funding from strategic. So of course, strategic become more mature in the way they look at investment in startups. What are the things that are going to change, do you think, that you can predict or foresee in terms of how strategic engaging with a startups?
Look, in this environment, right, the environment that I just talked about, I have heard the same thing that, the VCs are, being more cautious in terms of investment. The IPO windows are closing in, the interest rates are going up, right? In this environment, I think strategics have a very important role to play, especially strategics like us. We have a strong balance sheet. We have a AAA rating from a debt perspective. I think this is actually a favorable environment for strategics like us, where for promising technologies, we could provide the support, we could provide, some of the investment that the companies are looking for, right? So I think, our former CEO, Alex Korsky, used to say J&J is built for times like these. So I do think when it comes to startup environment, I think we have a very important role to play, and especially environment like this, a strategic like us to really step up to understand what are the important technologies, key technologies that our engagement might help. Right? I feel in medical devices, in general, I feel strategics have a very important role to play. We have established channels. We understand customers very well. We understand regulatory environment very well. The cost of doing business is going up. I don't know if you're aware of MDR regulations in EMEA. To be able to bring a product to EMEA is very expensive. It is going to be challenging for a startup to do that, right? Regulatory environment is changing in Australia, it's changing in China. If you have global ambitions, I think strategics like us have a very important role to play and could be a very valuable partner. So more and more, I think as the environment changes, think about digital products. Data privacy, data security. Not every startup can really create all that infrastructure, right? So again, strategics like us will have a very important role to play to bring those technologies to market, right? So when I think about the future, the way the environment is evolving in the innovation ecosystem, I think the role of strategic is going to become more and more prominent than it has been in the past.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like there's a lot more puzzle pieces. And so everybody kind of have to play together because you need other people to complete the puzzle.
That is correct. And hopefully we can be an important piece of the puzzle. I think strategics like us will continue to be a very important piece of that puzzle. Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your insight and what your vision is also in leading this organization within J&J.
No, thank you, Christine. It was very nice speaking with you. Thank you. Yeah, and if there's anything I can do to help, I'm very happy to volunteer my time to mentor or help anybody. I'm very happy to do that. So
yeah, no, that would be great. It's like we do this a lot. We really rely, like I said, the Rosamond Institute, we rely a lot on people like you who are willing to give back to support a lot of the early stage entrepreneur.
It would be a pleasure. Pleasure.
It's like hopefully the mistake that you made, it will not be repeated because you share that. I think that's what it is. But certain mistakes, they still have to go through. You cannot go through life without mistakes.
Correct. That is correct. Yeah. As long as you take that as a learning opportunity and not get pulled down by it, I think that's important.
Right. And I was saying that it's everybody can survive the mistake because the world, otherwise the world would not be filled with a lot of people with a lot of wisdom.
That is correct. That is correct.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Health Technology Podcast. We want to thank our executive producer, Herminio Neto, and our podcast engineer, Andrew Rojek. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. The Health Technology Podcast is available on all major platforms.